ownership over the beach. But, so they dusted off the colonial ordinance, they found this little case, and now what started off was really a lawsuit over, litter and motels from Route 1 busing customers down to the rights of way, ended up becoming a problem for everybody, and not just here at Wells, but statewide, because that ended up with a holding that affected 3,000 miles of coastline throughout the entire state. The logic in that case applied to the entire Maine coast. So 30 years of litigation over what we're to do with fishing, fouling, and navigation. The decision that came out of the Bell case said, well, you beachfront owners own litter title, but the public has the right to access the beach, access the beach for purposes of fishing, fouling, and navigation. And as Jeannie says, what the hell does that mean? Fishing, fouling, and navigation. Well, we've been litigating for 30 years. There's been a constant stream of cases discussing what is fishing and fouling and navigation. If I dig for worms, is that fishing? Is that fishing? Is a worm a fish? What about seaweed? Is seaweed a fish? What about scuba diving? Can scuba diving be considered navigation? We don't know these things. It's also created 30 years of market chaos. You have people that are literally going into their deeds to say, well, if I own shorefront property, then that must mean I own all the way down to the low tide line, right? So I'm just going to write that into my deed. You have real estate agents that are telling people, oh, you own this house, and guess what? It's on a private beach. That real estate agent doesn't know if the deed goes all the way to the low tide line. They have no idea, but they're telling people they own all the way to the private beach. And so what happens is that people come in from out of state, they'll spend $5 million on a beach house, and then they'll get completely pissed off when someone goes and has the audacity to go dig in their mud flats for clams. Well, the person digging in the mud flat for those clams has every right to dig for those clams, but they get completely incensed by that. You've got title insurance companies they're no longer insuring for the intertidal land. You've got title lawyers that are totally confused about whether they include or exclude the intertidal land. You've got self-labeled experts that are telling shorefront owners that they can exclude people from their property that they may or may not own. So you've got really chaos on the beach right now, and chaos in the shorefront. You guys may have known or heard about another case that my firm is handling, where we represent a client who woke up one morning to find that a banker from New Jersey bought the beach in front of their house. This is a house that's been in their family for 3 generations. They woke up one morning with a no trespassing sign in front of their house, saying, "Guess what? I now own the beach in front of your house. Get out." And if you want to act, we'd be happy to sell you a license to use the beach that your family has enjoyed for 3 generations. It'll cost you $30,000 a year. This is the type of just insane chaos that has wrought from that decision. So why is this case different? Well, there's been there've been 30 years of litigation since the Moody Beach case was first decided. This case is different because this is the first direct assault on the validity and the constitutionality of the colonial ordinance. Every other case so far has been sort of touching in the different aspects of the colonial ordinance here and there. This case says the colonial ordinance is bad law, was never good law, was never law in the state of Maine, should die 1,000 deaths. Other cases have used it as a defense or argued against it, but nobody before now has brought a case specifically to overturn it. Nobody has brought a case specifically to overturn the Bell cases, and that's exactly what we're doing. This is a statewide action. This case affects the beach. It affects the rocks. This case affects commercial use of the water. This case affects recreation. This case affects research. This case reflects the ever-evolving Maine economy and the way that not only you guys use your shoreline, but the way that everybody uses the shoreline in the state of Maine. The shoreline, we are a water-based people. We rely on our ocean in this state. It is everything to us. We are saltwater people in this state, and this case touches everyone in this state. So our basic claims are just as Orlando said. The colonial ordinance is not the law in the state of Maine. It never was. If it was the state of Maine, the legislature can change it, did change it, has changed it, will change it, has every right to change it. The way we use, and if that's not true, then the way we use the intertitle today should be considered within the way the public trust was defined in the 1600s. And these defendants who claim to own the intertitle today don't actually own the intertitle land that they claim to own. That's similar to what Jim was talking about earlier, to the Alameda or the Goose Rocks Beach case, that these people don't actually own title to the intertitle land that they're claiming. So where does the case stand now? We brought 4 legal theories. 3 of those legal theories are waiting to be appealed to the state Supreme Court. There's one legal theory that is still in the trial court right now. It's in what we call summary judgment stage. We just finished briefing summary judgment over the summer. That was an extremely intensive process, required a lot of legal time and a lot of legal effort, and it required a lot of depositions, a lot of legal briefing, and a lot of writing. And so the court will decide that 4th claim, that 4th legal theory, and then the entire case will move into the state Supreme Court. And we'll argue it in the state Supreme Court. The state Supreme Court will then either remand it down to the lower court or decide in our favor, or we'll see where it goes from there. But bits of it may be remanded, and if the whole thing gets dismissed one way or the other, then we will take parts of that case and then move it into the U.S. Supreme Court. Okay. Here's something that came up over the summer that you may have heard about. Moody beachfront owners do not pay property taxes on the intertitle land they claim to own. This is not part of our case. This is not necessarily relevant to our claims. And the reason why is because it's not necessarily relevant that a municipality can choose to not tax a piece of property. That's not really relevant to whether or not someone owns that piece of property. But it did come up in part of the discovery process for this case. When we first brought the case, a lot of you all came up to us and said, we're told that these people are paying taxes on this property. When people are being confronted on the beach, they would often confront people and say, get off of our beach because we pay property taxes on this beach. And I was like, oh, that sounds weird, that sounds strange. And we didn't really think much of it because, again, it's not part of our case, but we're doing some discovery and doing some research, and I was pulling up and looking at tax records, and I thought, oh, that doesn't look like they're paying taxes. Just started filing it away, and then I was doing a little bit more research, and then I hear more stories from you guys about people claiming they're paying taxes on the beach, and I was like, looking at more records, and I'm seeing the seaweed wall. Like, this is our famous seaweed wall that we all know about, and not the only one, but we're starting to see more and more of these. And then I started looking at records, and I started doing some measuring. And here's one of this is one of the defendants in our case. And I pulled the vision card, and I looked at, and I measured the property, and it was 0.17 acres. And I pulled the vision card, and I said, that's not the extent of the property according to his deed, but that's the size of the property on the vision card, 0.17 acres. So that's the only property that this person is taxed on. So I measured, then I read the deed, and I said, his deed goes all the way to the low tide line. What would it, if he was actually taxed on the full extent of the property, what might that look like? Oh, wow, that's a little bit more property. So if this particular person, if this defendant was actually taxed on the intertitle land that they claim to own, that is what their tax bill would look like. So instead of 0.17 acres, it would be 0.71 acres. That's 4 times the amount of land.
Then they start building giant houses.
They might. That might run up against some zoning issues. So this is why they're sort of being quiet about this issue. But this is one of the issues that maybe you all want to bring up to the town when you have that conversation with the town. So now there's a lot of things that can be said about this. Yes, there's some public trust issues, like people have the right to walk back and forth across their sand. They do. But remember now that they're saying that this is private property. Doesn't that sign here say like private beach? Right? They're saying this is, how can you say this is private property and not pay taxes on it? Does that seem fair to you? Doesn't seem fair to me. So I thought y'all should know about this. And when I heard you guys were having a rally over the summer, I thought, well, let's start talking about this thing, because to me it seems like we don't think they own this at all, and I think you guys would agree they don't own this at all. But as long as they claim to own it, then I think it's fair that they should have to pay taxes on it, at least some taxes. Now we've had some response to this issue. People have said, well, here's some things they say. Well, hi, Mom. Okay, well, but we pay higher rate because we're on a private beach. They might say we pay a higher mill rate because we're special. We pay. This is a private beach, and so we pay a higher mill rate. No, that's actually not true. We went and compared their rate, the rate that they pay, their valuation rate, to Wells Beach. It's so great in this town because you've got a private beach and a not private beach, and you can compare the two, and guess what? They're the same. So no, and they might also say, well, our houses are assessed more because they're on a private beach. In other words, our houses are more valuable because we're on this private beach. Well, guess what? They're not. They're the same. So you can do the research yourself. I'm not an assessment valuation expert. I'm just a dumb lawyer. But you can actually compare. You can look at Wells Beach and Moody Beach and compare the two. You're saying, and I'm sure that the town assessor will have an explanation. But you got to watch out because there's a lot of like voodoo that goes into these property assessments. And what I would recommend doing when you're engaging in these things is really have your data kind of there and just say, look, you can tell me about the eye of Newton, wing of bat that goes into the sauce that makes these things up. But when you're looking at results, it should be, it should be equal. And these aren't even, these taxes are being, these results are coming out the same.